Radyo Ronda
DXKP Pagadian.
Member, kapisanan ng mga broadcaster ng Pilipinas.
People worldwide are living longer thanks to more people embracing healthier lifestyles. People worldwide are living longer thanks to more people embracing healthier lifestyle changes plus advances in medicine as well as nutrition. In our country though, the number of older people is increasing rapidly, faster than the growth of the total population. Tacking on extra years is a welcome development, but not when you're riddled with chronic illnesses. Genetics can play a factor to living longer lives, but keeping healthy at any age is up to you. I'm Dr. Freddy Gomez and you're watching MedTalk Health Talk on CNN Philippines. We're here to build a healthier future for you. Aging comes with health challenges. By being aware of these conditions and taking the appropriate steps, we can avoid getting sick as we age. To help us with today's discussion, let's welcome Dr. Lourdes Carolina Dumlao. She's a geriatrician at St. Luke's Medical Center and the president of the Philippine Society of Geriatrics and Gerontology. Also with us is Dr. Karen Estepa Garcia. She's a family and community medicine specialist at Manila Doctors Hospital and UPPGH. Dr. Sandy, what happens to our bodies when we age?
So we know that biologic age is basically your chronologic age. It's how old you are based on what year you were born and the number of years that you've been alive. But when we say aging, it can also happen on several levels because if you compare let's say a 91-year-old versus a 65-year-old, you may actually see that the 65-year-old is less active, more frail than a 91-year-old who can still manage to dance, get up and leave the house all by herself.
Now, Dr. Sandy, first, let's go over what cellular aging is.
It's actually the progressive decline of your body's resistance to stress and other cellular damages. So, we know that we're made up of different cells, and these cells have a programmed cell death. Now, they can't divide indefinitely. They can't function forever. So at some point, it will either turn off, which is what we call cell senescence, or they die, which we call apoptosis, or they can become abnormal, like what happens in cancer. So this is what we term as cellular aging. Now, other theories like hormonal aging is the ability of our hypothalamus to regulate hormones in the body. The hypothalamus is a part of our brain that regulates a lot of the body processes, like our heart rates and blood pressures, temperature, fluid and electrolyte balance, including your thirst. It regulates appetite and your body weight. It regulates secretions in your stomach and intestines, and even your sleep.
Hormones play a huge role in aging, especially during childhood when they help build bones and muscles for that matter. And they also facilitate the development of secondary male or female characteristics. Now, Dr. Karen, is this where menopause for women and andropause for men come in?
At this point in time, wherein menopause happens during aging and andropause happens in aging for males. So menopause, there are a lot of changes that occurs here for the female, and it's actually one factor that determines the aging process, especially if there is already low estrogen in the blood, of female or our older adult patients.
Aging caused by accumulative damage to mind is about the external factors that build up over time. So this is your exposure to toxins, pollutions, unhealthy food. Now, Dr. Karen, what happens to the body over time when exposed to these?
When we are exposed to these unhealthy toxins and also our health condition actually declines, it actually increases the chance for a rapid increase in aging. So these are some measures that we want to be controlled while we are young, but this happens when we get older. That the effect of that exposure to that toxins.
Now, Doc Sandy, what about metabolic aging naman? Explain this for to our viewers, please.
Metabolic aging is just the basal metabolic rate, no, or how many calories your bodies burn at rest. So you will notice that as you age, your body is able to burn calories less efficiently, so that even if you're eating less, you can still gain weight. And so we see that this slows down as people age. So the less active, the lower the basal metabolic rate, then they also lose muscle mass. So it turns into fat.
Aging for men as well as women can be an entirely different experience. Dr. Karen, tell us naman about this one.
The factor that I would probably consider as important here are in relation to hormones. These are biologic factors wherein as women starts to menopause or during the perimenopausal period, the levels of estrogen lowers down and increases the aging process, while that of men, testosterone level is still increasing, and it actually slows down the aging. So there are also studies that will tell us, Dr. Fred, that men increases their inflammation, okay, as they get older. So it increases their chance of developing diseases as they get older.
So what kind of mindset should we have when we do approach the latter years?
So what I often tell my patients, actually, the only people who don't grow old are those that died young. So, like you said, aging is inevitable. But I don't want people to think of it as aging being a negative thing. Because since aging is a natural process of life, then we want to be able to embrace it and be prepared for it. So I always encourage my patients to be active, to make plans. Not just because you are turning 60, which people here in the Philippines anticipate a lot, because they officially become senior citizens, doesn't mean that you are limited in the number of activities that you can do. A lot of people will say that once they turn 60, their lives will change. But this is really a mindset. No? It's not a given.
Now, it's one thing to see gray hairs, wrinkles, but as we grow older, they become apparent in the way we feel. Now, in addition to our outside appearance, changes do happen in the inside. We'll talk about this more when we return. We're your connection to healthcare. You're watching MedTalk Health Talk on CNN Philippines. From blurry vision to brittle bones, a number of health conditions can show up as we age. And we have to be wary of these so we can stay healthier longer. I'm Dr. Freddy Gomez, and you're watching MedTalk Health Talk on CNN Philippines. We're together in health. Dr. Sandy, what are the common health conditions associated with aging?
So the most common changes in aging are usually hearing and visual changes, osteoporosis, and osteoarthritis. Older patients are also more prone to developing depression, dementia. And of course, there's already the complications of chronic medical conditions like diabetes, hypertension. And I think the most important is when they reach older, we have what we call geriatric syndromes. And these are complex groups of symptoms or diseases that may have significant impact in the functionality and lifestyle of older patients.
I want to talk about bones for that matter, because healthy bones are critical to senior health. And as we age, our bodies begin to absorb old bone tissue faster than it can create new ones. And this means that our bones tend to become thinner and weaker, and this leads to a condition known as osteoporosis. Dr. Karen, is this something that can be prevented?
So what are the measures that can help us prevent osteoporosis? So as we get older, our bones tend to shrink in size and density. So we tell our patients to increase their calcium intake. There is a recommended allowance of daily calcium intake for older adults, and this is around 1,200 milligrams per day. And also to get adequate amounts of vitamin D, either sa sunlight, through sunlight, or there are also sources in our diet that gives a good source of vitamin D. Your fish, your eggs, your mga vitamin D supplements. And also increase physical activity.
Dr. Sandy, let's talk about mga vision problems sa mga tumatanda. What are the common ones, and can these be prevented?
The most common one would probably be cataracts. No? We know that there is anatomical changes in the eyes as you change. Some of the structural changes include muscle atrophy, so your eyelids can become thinner. That's why they tend to droop. When you look at older people, it's like their eyes are 1/3 closed. There's also dryness in the eyes, but in spite of the dryness, they can have tears falling out because there's less effective draining in the ducts because they narrow as you age, in spite of the decrease in tears production. No? The whitish portion of your eyes, which we call the conjunctiva, may also turn yellow as you age. Those are usually cholesterol deposits. The pupils, which are the part of your eyes that contract when there is bright light, also becomes more sluggish, and that's why as you age, you notice that you are more susceptible to bright lights, and night vision becomes poorer because the ability of your eyes to accommodate light becomes slower.
What can seniors do, or those who are getting older? How can they address any hearing concerns that they may have?
So there's also really age-related hearing loss, which we call presbycusis. No? Again, anatomical changes because the muscles in the ear atrophy as we age. And the most common is high-frequency sounds will decrease. It can be hard for them to distinguish conversational speech. One of the most important things is actually older patients should be recognized as possibly having hearing impairments. So people talking to them should recognize this and try not to speak over and above background noise.
Age-related memory loss causes one to be forgetful and can become confused with tasks like paying the bills or following directions. Dr. Karen, can this affect everyone?
Yes, it can affect older adults, but as to the timing of it happening is something that we cannot yet predict. Okay? So it's something that might happen as early on or later in their life.
Are there things, Dr. Karen, that people can do to hopefully prevent this?
Just as the body needs physical activity, so does we also need to stimulate our brain in order to prevent the cognitive decline that can occur as we get older. Okay, so what I tell my patients is to involve yourself in exercises for brain exercises. These are mind game exercises to help stimulate.
Now, arthritis is another common condition that can happen as we age. Now, Dr. Sandy, is this inevitable as people grow older? Can this be prevented? How is this treated?
Actually, osteoarthritis is not inevitable. No? This is also what we call wear and tear on the bones. So there are certain predisposing factors that can lead to osteoarthritis, namely activity in early portions of life. So you will notice that patients who are very active in weight-bearing sports like running can develop osteoarthritis earlier on than patients who were not involved in those types of sports. Patients who are heavy will also develop osteoarthritis earlier. Some patients will not develop osteoarthritis at all, especially if they are relatively lighter in weight and remained moderately active throughout their lifetime.
As we age, our heart works harder to pump blood throughout our body. Dr. Sandy, can you name some of the more common conditions when it comes to the heart?
Hypertension is probably the leading cause of heart problems. No? And hypertension is what we now consider to be a lifestyle disease. In the earlier years, I think hypertension would only occur in patients who are in their 40s or 50s, but now we even see patients who are 20s who have hypertension. And this is because of lifestyle choices like diet, sedentary lifestyle, or the lack of activity.
Because our immune system gets weaker as we age. For example, getting a flu might not be a cause of concern for younger people, but for seniors, there's a greater risk for complications. Dr. Karen, what can happen when they get the flu?
Subtle signs like loss of appetite, or they just become weak, or changes in their moods, okay, are already subtle signs that will tell us that there is a beginning infection, flu, or probably pneumonia in our older populations. But once they also get symptoms, sometimes it really magnifies, and we really need to do something about it, meaning preventive care aside eating healthy and boosting our immune system, getting enough sleep, is to help them maintain their vaccination status.
When we return, we'll discuss some of the steps we can take to minimize the many challenges associated with aging. Your health is our mission. This is MedTalk Health Talk on CNN Philippines. Aging can't be avoided, but there are many things you can do to mitigate the environmental factors that influence this. I'm Dr. Freddy Gomez, and you're watching MedTalk Health Talk on CNN Philippines. There are things you can do to grow older with your body and mind and let them be as healthy as they possibly can. Dr. Karen, let's talk about what some of these are.
For our patient-centered, our advice of how to eat healthy, the right diet for them, how to exercise regularly, and what is the recommended exercise regimen for our older adult patients, including how to stay mentally active and getting enough sleep, and ensuring that they have, the vaccinations that are supposed to be given at their specific age.
Things that we can do to prevent things before they start is getting regular checkups. This is also very important for the elderly, and your doctor can help find problems even before they start. Dr. Sandy, what are the most important things to get checked?
It's so much easier to treat when we are able to prevent. It's difficult to run after diseases when they are already there, when in fact we can prevent them from happening in the first place. So even if we cannot prevent aging, we can minimize or mitigate the risks of developing diseases as you age. So one of the things I always tell patients is, go see your doctor even if you are well. See, the mindset of the Filipino is they only see doctors when they are sick.
Dr. Karen, what kind of food should we be eating?
Foods that lots of nutrient with less calories. And this would include your fruits and vegetables. Choose different types. The more colorful it is, the better. Whole grains like cereals, oatmeals, and even brown rice, these are high in fiber as well. And yung mga fat-free or mga low-fat milk that will give us good sources of vitamin D and calcium.
Dr. Sandy, now that the elderly have to stay at home, what are the things that they can do to protect their mental health?
We encourage families and friends of older patients to make use of technology. Almost everyone now has a cell phone. It doesn't even have to be a high-tech cell phone. So regular phone calls, even if it's just to say hi, to ask if they've eaten, to ask how they're feeling, helps. They don't have to do it on a daily basis. For patients with a number of children or those that are living abroad, I make them make a schedule so they can do a rotational call so that at least every day there's one or two people that check up on the older patients.
And Dr. Sandy, what's your advice for those who are becoming older and having trouble sleeping?
Usually problems in sleeping is what we call a sleep hygiene problem. It's really behavioral. Because old patients are mostly at home now and don't have a lot of activity also, what they end up doing is taking long naps in the morning and in the afternoon. So much so that when they sleep in the evening, they're able to sleep maybe 3-4 hours and then they're wide awake again. But if you count the actual number of hours that they were asleep. It goes all the way up to 8 to 10 hours per day, simply because they take very long naps. So number one is to avoid very long naps. No? Number two is to avoid any caffeinated drinks after 3 or 4 p.m. so that it doesn't keep them awake at night. And three is to reduce any sort of stimulation in their bedroom. No? TVs, radios, lights.
Dr. Sandy, please share with us some simple things that we can do to have a more positive outlook in life.
Don't think about growing old. No? Some people obsess on their age that they dread turning 60. Again, it's just really a mindset. Just because you turn a year older every year doesn't mean that there has to be a limitation in the activities that you can do or in the things that you think you can do. Just remain active physically, socially, and mentally, and everything will follow after that.
And Dr. Karen, what's your advice for our viewers?
Self-care is important. They're very obsessed with that age that they're looking forward to. Maybe they have to be obsessed now with doing self-care, and it has to be a multidimensional approach, not only physical, mental, but also their spiritual health. So I think that's a short advice for our older adults.
Thank you, geriatrician Dr. Lourdes Carolina Dumlao and family medicine specialist Dr. Karen Estepa Garcia. We want to be your partner for a lifetime of good health. I'm Dr. Freddy Gomez, and this has been MedTalk Health Talk on CNN Philippines.